What's going on, everyone? My name is Merten here from DataDash, and I hope you guys are having a fantastic day wherever you are, because in today's review, I want to spend some time to talk about one of the more genuinely interesting projects that I've seen pop up on my radar when it comes to the narrative of real-world assets. Today, we're going to be talking about none other than WhiteRock, and WhiteRock's main objective of aiming to make it as simple as possible and as accessible as possible for people to buy stocks, bonds, real estate, everything that you can think of in the world of RWAs in the world of crypto and Web3. So I want to go ahead and spend some time to talk about this today. I want to talk about technically how WhiteRock is able to achieve this, a lot of the big benefits of WhiteRock's user experience and the feature set that come with it, but also as well some of the things that I'd like to see more of, some of the questions I still have around, as this is a big objective to tackle. We got a lot to unpack here in today's video. If you happen to enjoy it, consider dropping a like, and let's go ahead and kick things off. Now, it's important to understand from a high-level overview that real-world assets is probably one of the more substantial narratives. It is no surprise that it is baked into the broader kind of DeFi narrative, at least in my opinion, when we talk about traditional finance actually utilizing Web3, expanding beyond just retail. This is a very big category here, and you hear Larry Fink from BlackRock and a whole range of other companies in the traditional financial space talking about this being the future. So whoever could build the most accessible and streamlined version of this is obviously going to build something quite big and quite powerful. Now, WhiteRock being able to do this here, they're not the only project here, there are others out there, but I want to demonstrate here today what WhiteRock has been able to build so far and what you can use here today that is actually quite impressive. In fact, one of the best Web3 user experiences I've seen when it comes to DeFi applications that touch real-world assets or at a minimum are tied to traditional financial instruments. So let's go ahead and spend some time here. We're diving into the dashboard. What we can see is that the UI is incredibly simple. It's not overly complex. It's not something that'll really throw you off. You'll get really adapted to it in a very short period of time. And there are a couple key things that WhiteRock really allows you to do. So first off, one of the first things we have to discuss before we even talk about real-world assets is their native stablecoin here. Now, if you essentially try to click deposit, they're going to request that you deposit USDT into the deposit address, and this will give your account an equivalent amount of USDX. Now, this is the platform's native stablecoin for WhiteRock. Now, the reason why there's this native stablecoin here is because at the end of the day, USDX is going to give you not just obviously your principal in this case that you can use to trade in a variety of different types of real world assets, so to speak, but outside of that as well, you're also going to be able to earn 5% risk-free. And the reason they do this is because they basically do what USDT and a variety of other stablecoins like USDC take advantage of. With your deposits being on there, essentially, they're basically going and taking those and purchasing U.S. treasuries. So these are basically government bonds from the United States that provide what's known as the risk-free rate of return, right? So long as you believe in the stability of the federal government of the U.S., let alone the dollar in that case, then why not tap into some of that yield? Usually that is just monetized by USDT and USDC, unbeknownst to most users, and most people don't bat an eye. But 5% annualized when you're maybe sitting in cash half the time at any given time throughout the year, that's a really good return. So it's best to tap into that high yield that's again provided by those treasury notes. And USDX passes that on to the user, a huge benefit for the end user experience, which I think is really great here. But outside of that as well, we also have the ability to go out and manage our investments in a variety of different equities or different types of stocks. Now, the important thing to understand here is that these are tokenized representations of the stocks at the end of the day, and they don't cover every single stock you can think of. Right now, they're starting off with a few key ones like NVIDIA, Apple, Tesla, Coinbase, MicroStrategy. So we've got some big heavyweight names here, names in which you're familiar with, and I have no doubt in the future there will probably be, for example, broad index plays as well. There will be a wider pool of stocks. But at the end of the day, this is a really great first kind of MVP iteration here. You can dive into each individual stock. You can obviously see the price change over time from the chart on the prior page, but there's a couple different things you can do here. You can see all the data relevance around each stock. So in this case, the assets under management, the redemption capacity for people who, for example, might hold positions when they want to withdraw. But there's outside of that, there's the ability obviously to do these meta-style transactions where you can swap from USDX into these different types of equities. But outside of that, there's also the ability later on to mint and redeem. So essentially, if you already hold positions in an existing brokerage account under certain custodians or providers, you'll be able to actually bridge them into the WhiteRock platform. So this is really exciting. This is, again, for me personally, I think already the USDT deposit, going through, not to mention one thing I didn't really cover earlier, but I think is important to understand. You'll register with your email, so use Web3 authentication. It's completely self-custodial, right? And outside of that as well, it's a traditional Web2 experience. You verify via your email or social media login, and essentially from there, you can simply deposit USDT and get USDX, or be able to go through this minting or redeem function. I think that this is really interesting from just a pure product development standpoint, right? Irrespective of some of the things we're going to talk about later, I think that this overall is one of the best Web3 experiences I've seen, hands down. Like, this is exactly how I would imagine a Web3 tokenized platform to look like and to function like. This is exactly what end users need in order to actually really, be able to have that all-in-one Web3 experience, from stocks, bonds, real estate, like fractionalized real estate ownership, maybe REITs, and then also being able to have your crypto Web3 assets, right, where everything can live in one umbrella platform. So that, to me, is definitely what I'm looking forward to here, right? So this is, again, just an understanding of the kind of broad user experience. And we've really ran through most of it here, right? So the application is not trying to do everything under the sun. They're starting off with a couple key stocks. You can see that the user experience is really clean here. Once you have your investment portfolio, you'll be able to see the balance change over time, over different windows of time. So this is really clean, kind of dry here. I think, again, one of the biggest things here is USDX. I've seen maybe one other protocol do something like this before, where they attempt to tap into the yield of treasuries, in this case, basically circumventing the lack of yield you get from USDT and USDC and some of the other plays. So being able to get that access yield to treasury bills, I think, is really nice here, and without having to do any manual work, right? You're just depositing your USDT as you normally would. You get that balance representation, and you're getting the yield with it too, which is pretty great. And there's a realistic yield generation when it comes to this. It's not some kind of pie in the sky. Oh, we're going to give you 10, 20, 30% yield. There's a real backing yield, or you can track treasury yields, and that will probably fluctuate over time depending on the Fed funds rate. But outside of this as well, you have tokenized stocks. Now, it is important to understand here, guys, at the end of the day, from a legal basis here, you aren't getting voting rights. And technically, with the way that WhiteRock is going about it, you technically don't have actual ownership of the stock here, right? This is just the legal structuring here. It's important to understand that. But at the end of the day, the platform itself aims to be as entirely self-custodial and automated as possible, as trustless as possible. So in this case, when you're holding these tokens, the USDX, if you're holding the tokenized securities in this case, or the tokenized stocks, right? Essentially, you're holding all that from within your wallet. It's self-custodial. But outside of that as well, the important thing to understand is that this really opens up the ability to do some exciting things. You can have fractionalized ownership, so essentially being able to have part of maybe a broader real estate portfolio, maybe even if there's one property that's tokenized, having fractional ownership of that, being able to have fractionalized ownership of a stock, maybe, for example, MicroStrategy or NVIDIA is too much for you. You want to have a couple $dozen of ownership here. That's also something you can do as well. So starting off with more minimal amounts and accessibility for more people, 24/7 trading. A lot of people look at aftermarket hours for trading and sometimes want that additional opportunity to have liquidity to be able to exit positions out of the given time zones of trading hours, right? So if you're someone abroad, that can be a huge feature set. Right. And again, the no geographical limitations and instant settlement. This is a really interesting element here, where blockchain, at the end of the day, whether it's going to be Ethereum or a variety of other L1s or L2s, that we can have this settlement layer that is completely transparent, open 24/7, and accessible to anyone, really democratizing that opportunity. I think that is really interesting. So again, overall, the vision here, again, as you can see from the doc section, it's quite simple. If you're curious like myself to understand the technicals of how money flows, where things are going, because at the end of the day, unfortunately, a lot of Web3 startups are quite obscure about this. I think it's great that they have a nice visual representation here of how the flows essentially work all the way from the customer down to the custodian through the back end and money flow. So if you guys are interested to look through this, feel free to take a look at the docs section. I recommend you guys do your own due diligence here. Don't just take it blindly. Take a look through it, read through it, and see if it's something that is something you feel comfortable with. Because there's really two dynamics here that I want to talk about. Obviously, there are those who might be really interested to try the product. Some of you out there might really be juiced up about this idea of having one single platform for real world assets and your digital assets, right? And in that case, again, do your own due diligence, take a look through it. Definitely read into the contract audits as well. They had PeckShield conduct them as well. This gives me a lot of confidence. I know PeckShield is one of the higher rated, kind of quality assurance smart contract auditors in the Web3 space, right? I used to have my own startup and stuff, so we went through a variety of audits. PeckShield is definitely one of the best ones in my opinion. But outside of that as well, there's a lot of different types of details around the transparency here for various different networks and the various different tokens for USDX. So if you want to look through this data, I definitely recommend that. On the flip side, if you're like myself as well, you're a trader, you're looking for kind of the next big project here, you're trying to figure out whether or not WhiteRock would be something you want to have a position in. At the end of the day, guys, I'm not going to show you anything. I'm not going to tell you have to absolutely go out and buy it and everything. The one thing I will say, though, is that when I take a look at WhiteRock from a valuation perspective, I like to look at things in terms of fully diluted value. It's sitting at around $143 million valuation, right? And you compare that to Ondo, for example, which is sitting at right around $14 billion. You've basically got a project here that is very close, not exactly, but pretty close to 1/100th of the size of Ondo in a fully diluted valuation. And at the end of the day, I don't know, guys, to be honest, if WhiteRock is going to be that big project. There are tons of small and mid-cap projects, some of which will rise to be the #1 project, or maybe this will be an open sea where there will be multiple different types of real-world asset platforms, maybe focused on specific niches. Again, I think it might be an open sea market where essentially there's going to be a lot of different players in this sector. The point I want to say, though, is from a trade perspective, it does have a higher multiple potential. It's going to be very difficult for Ondo, whether you're looking at it from a circulating valuation or fully diluted valuation, to really go off and do a 5 or 10x, right? So I'm not saying here that you should go all into WhiteRock or anything like that. Again, I want you guys to do your due diligence, take a look through the project. Let me know down below in the comments as well what you guys think about it. But I think overall the product vision is there. The user experience is streamlined. And I think that this is the kind of thing we should expect from a Web3 startup. So irrespective, considering the current regulatory framework that exists that makes it quite difficult for new projects like this to get off the ground, the way they've been able to structure it through a BVI entity, which is what a lot of crypto entities do, and to build this clean user experience that right now already offers some pretty exciting functionality, I think this definitely puts them at a minimum in a position where you should keep them on your radar. Now, the big things I want to bring to your guys' attention, again, I like to talk about the good, but I also like to bring you guys my honest thoughts here. The big things that I would be a little bit cautious about, again, is that with any crypto startup, as I just mentioned, most usually do this kind of BVI structuring, again, being able to utilize stablecoins is kind of an on-ramp. This is, again, like most crypto startups, kind of a way to get around the existing system and allow it to work in a legal, compliant manner, right? So that's an important thing to understand, that this is still using basically offshore markets to be able to operate. And this is how a lot of crypto exchanges, a lot of crypto businesses operate. So it's not an inherently bad thing. It's just important to understand that. And outside of that as well, the disclaimers I mentioned earlier about the ownership rights around the stock. There are important dynamics like that to keep in mind. It's still a small project here. It's a new kid on the block over the last couple of months. So it's important to understand those dynamics here. I would love to learn more about the team. I would love to see some more details around the kind of process of building this, some of the other partners that they work with to facilitate this. I appreciate the diagrams and details. I would just like to see it in a more real sense, at the end of the day. That's with a lot of crypto projects. That's something that I usually am left with at the end of the day. But otherwise, I think that this is quite exciting stuff, especially for a real practical iteration of real-world assets in the crypto space. And they have a lot of big partnerships as well, with a variety of different names from traditional finance, and using Coinbase Prime as well for custody for their corporate company, as well as working with a whole range of different corporate partners to be able to bring this to life. So if you guys are interested to learn more about it, I'll leave a link down below in the description. This is definitely a narrative of mine that I'm really excited to see take off, especially now with the new regulatory regime and the new administration around crypto and Web3. So if you guys are interested, check it out down below in the description. Let me know what you think down below in the comments, whether you think the project's really interesting, if you have some questions as well. And of course, you can always follow them over on their Twitter, or you can follow follow them over on Telegram or on their Discord where you can ask any questions. Thanks so much, guys, for tuning in. As always, if you enjoyed the video, consider dropping a like, and I'll see you guys right back here on the next video. Take care, everyone.